that led to distress, and these were regular in the British rule. Due to the high taxes and rents, there were nothing to the peasants. Peasants have not get any benefits with the high taxes and high rents. There was nothing left to the peasants. So they faced a lot of difficulties. Their difficulty increased whenever crops failed. And here, the food grains cultivated in India were exported to other countries, that too in a large quantities. Food grains cultivated in India, they exported to European countries. So that created scarcity of food grains in India. There was a shortage of food in entire country in our India. And here during this famines time and scarcity of food shortage, government did not interfere into this matter because peasants were paying taxes to the jamindars, dorras, jagirdars. So government did not interfere in this matter. Powerful traders, they created artificial scarcity. What is mean by artificial scarcity? It is hoarding the food grains artificially. Though food grains are sufficient, they blocked it, they stopped it to create shortage so that the price of the food grains could rise. So corrupted traders who were very powerful in their locality, they also created scarcity of food grains artificially by holding that stopping the food grains. So this was the situation in many parts of the country in Andhra Pradesh, like the rest of the country, how our country and every part was suffering with severe famines. In Andhra Pradesh also, there was a severe famine in the 19th and 20th centuries. There, a major famine occurred in India at Odisha, that was called Ganjam Famine. Ganjam is a region in Odisha which is adjacent to the Andhra. So in Ganjam region there was a severe famine in the year 1865 and 66. Okay, about this Ganjam famine you have studied in lower class, and here famines occurred in Rayalaseema district also. Rayalaseema was a drought region, and there irrigation facilities were not available. More than severe 11 famines occurred here in the middle of 19th century. Thousands of people died in this Ganjam famine. So Ganjam famine was very severe famine occurred at Ganjam, and that was called with that region name Ganjam famine. So this Ganjam famine have taken the life of thousands of the people. Thousands of people died during this famine. And these riots, there the shortage of food, grains were not available to the people. People who were hungry due to the shortage of food grains, they food riots, what we call grain riots, occurred in many parts of Andhra districts. What is meant by grain riots? It is a riot, that means rebellion by the people to get food grains, as food grains were shortage. So people involved in food riots to get the food grains. Here the government with the army suppressed these food riots. So troops were sent by the government to quell the violence. Violence occurred. There were clashes between government troops and riots of the people taking part in the food riots. So there was a violence. So to suppress this food riots, their troops were sent by the government. So during the famine times, peasants suffered a lot and struggled a lot. Many of the people died due to the shortage of food. There were no food grains for people. For many days, they got without any food grains. Many days were passed without the food grains. So it is very difficult situation faced by the people. How long they will be facing that situation? So peasants who suffered a lot by the jamindars, dorras, jagirdars, samstanamdars, and even moneylenders, they gone against the exploitation made by the landlords. Let's look into the peasant movements. Peasants were suffered by high land revenue rates. Jamindars, dorras, they have collected a high land revenue. Nizam, with the help of jagirdars, samstanandars, inamdars, and dorras, have collected a high land revenue. And landlords were very powerful in their locality. We have studied dorras were the large landlords. They maintained some lakhs of acres and some thousands of villages under their control. They lived in forts. They maintained their own large retinue of soldiers and servants. So these landlords oppressed peasants. Landlords given their lands for cultivation to the peasants who are called tenant peasants, tenant farmers. So landlords oppressed these peasants. Some of the landlords also acted as money lenders, right? So money lenders who were also landlords, they have charged a high rate of interest on lended money to the peasants. So peasants suffered by the high land revenue and oppression of the landlords and high interest rates charged by the moneylenders. During the colonial period under the British rule, peasants in the different parts of the country, that means in Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana, in Uttar Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh, in Bihar, in Odisha, in many parts of the country, peasants suffered during the British rule and by the landlords. For a long period, peasants were looted, exploited in the colonial period by the landlords and moneylenders. Finally, peasants have started a protest against the landlords, merchants, and state officials who collected land revenue. So, throughout India, in different parts of the India, we find several riots which started by the peasants. Those are called peasant movements. The famous peasant movements in India were Deccan riots, which occurred in 1860s at Rampachondavaram during the Alluri Sitaramaraju period. At Rampachondavaram, Rampa pictures. It is a revolt by the peasants at Rampa village. And Mopila, also one region in Malabar region in Kerala. There also peasants organized an agitation against the feudal lords, that landlords. And in 19th century, we see in many parts of the nation open revolts started by the peasants. What started? Open revolts. In the 19th century, it started. Peasants who started these revolts, they also joined the national movement for freedom of India from the colonial rule. Here in the 20th century, large numbers of peasants who were organizing peasant movements in different parts of the nation, they also joined our freedom struggle. In 1920 and 22, the peasants of Awadh. Awadh is a region in Uttar Pradesh. Okay, in 1920 and 22, in this period, peasants, they took a procession to show protest against the exploitation by jamindars. Jamindars were exploiting the peasants and extracting money. Extracting means taking money by squeezing, like charging high rate of interest on the peasants. So the peasants of Awadh in Uttar Pradesh, they took a large procession in the streets. Procession in the sense a rally, okay, moving through the streets to show protest against the jamindars. Jamindars, moneylenders, doras were extracting much more money from the peasants. So there in Awadh, peasants have boycotted many of the jamindars from the villages. Jamindars were kicked out of the villages. Many jamindars were socially boycotted. That means peasants have sent jamindars out of their villages. Peasants also refused to cultivate the lands of the jamindars. Jamindars have gone for cultivating their lands by force on peasants. Earlier, peasants worked by the force of jamindars. Now, by this time, jamindars were driven out from the villages. Peasants refused to cultivate the fields, the lands, agricultural lands of the jamindars. Okay, and these peasants also refused to pay high rent, which is charged by the jamindars and dorras. So, to show protest, it is very essential to be united. So, to get unity among the peasants, peasants have formed their organizations called Kisan Sabhas. In every part of the nation, peasants have formed their Kisan Sabhas. In Kisan Sabhas, they have formed their program of action against the Dorras and Jamindars. So Kisan Sabhas played an active role in the agitations led by the peasants. And these Kisan Sabhas passed resolutions against the Jamindars who looted them. Okay, so what kind of demands they passed in the Kisan Sabhas, right? First one is that they demanded to end the landlordism. That means to abolish landlordism. That means landlords were extracting money from the peasants. So landlords were collecting high rent from the tenant farmers. So here Kisan Sabhas decided, the peasants in the Kisan Sabhas, they decided and demanded to end the landlordism. There should not be landlords. Okay. And they also demanded reduction of land revenue, high land revenue collected by jamindars and dorras. So peasants demanded to reduce the land revenue on tenant farmers. And they also demanded to control money lenders. Money lenders were charging high rate of interest on money lended to the farmers. So who are money lenders here? Jamindars and dorras, right? So jamindars who had land, that land they given on rent. So there they collected high rent, and some of the peasants who did not have money, for them money was given by jamindars as money lenders, and there they charged a high rate of interest. Okay, so whenever the peasants failed to repay the money borrowed from money lenders, that is jamindars, money lenders have seized the lands of the peasants. So peasants have lost their lands. Okay, and some other peasants who taken land on rent from the jamindars, they also paid high rent. So whatever crop cultivated and sold in the market and earned income, that was not enough to lead their life. Much of the income earned by tenant farmers gone paying the rent to the jamindars. So, in this situation, we see jamindars have extracted much more money. They seized the lands of the peasants. Okay, and also they have gone for enjoying the vast lands. So, with the landlordism, peasants were not benefited anything. Rulers, it may be the Nizam or the British, they supported the Jamindars because Jamindars were paying land revenue to the Nizam. Okay, that what we call peshkas. We discussed it here. Okay, some of the land revenue collected by Dorras, Jamindars, Jagirdars, Samstanamdars, they paid to the Nizam. That was called peshkash. Okay, Nizam wanted a land revenue which is coming from the Jamindars. Jamindars also benefited by the Nizam because whenever the peasants were raising revolt, such revolts were suppressed by army of Jamindars taking the support of Nizam or the Britishers. So peasants suffered during the British colonial period and the Nizam's rule and with landlords. So they demanded to end the landlordism, reduction of the land revenue, and to control moneylenders. British government helped the zamindars to suppress the revolts. Understand? So how Britishers helped the zamindars in suppressing the peasants' revolts? Especially will focus to the Telangana peasants struggle in the next chapter coming. Okay, this is the what